There are a number of countries where the where chicken produced by the United States is not legal to sell. That might come as some news to you, might be surprising to you. And chicken is one of those things that carnivores will eat. Usually, if they're a savvy carnivore, they'll have it as an occasional treat, fried chicken wings or something, or maybe the occasional chicken leg to, give themselves a little bit of variety. But most people stick to the ruminant animals most of the time, which is good advice in general. And chicken gets a bad rap most of the time because of the polyunsaturated fatty acid content, usually found in the skin and in the slightly fattier cuts. And while people will hotly debate whether you should eat chicken or not, the really interesting thing about this is that our chicken's not available overseas. America is an exporter of beef. In fact, most of the beef you buy at the grocery store here in the United States isn't actually American beef. Turns out a lot of that is imported from Mexico. That our better, higher quality beef gets sold overseas because it's, well, higher quality than most places offer, and it's in high demand, in increasing demand. And I think that's all good, all well and good that American beef is increasingly in high demand, despite the problems with price that I talked about earlier in the week that's coming for everybody this year. But our chicken is not available everywhere. Despite the fact that the United States, until stupid decisions were made this last year that culled a large part of the population of chickens, driving our costs up for eggs and chicken, our chickens just aren't available overseas, and they could be. And the reason they're not is fascinating because it's a two-factor problem. One, the demand's not there. And it's not because people don't like chicken. People love chicken. Anywhere you go where people eat meat, they eat chicken. It's the one thing you can serve to people who, as long as they're not vegetarian or vegan, you can serve it to almost anyone, anywhere, regardless of race, creed, religion, anything, and they'll be able to eat it. That's why it's on the menu at almost every restaurant. They don't eat American chicken because they don't trust it. Now that's interesting. Why don't they trust it? Well, it turns out that American chicken gets, it's raised in really dirty environments. It require the chicken, once it's processed, to be practically bathed in chlorine. Now, why is it bathed in chlorine? Because these dirty environments are rife with salmonella, E. coli, and other things. And so American chicken has a kind of a weird smell to it and a weird taste to it compared to chicken elsewhere. We're used to it. But I'd always wondered why, when I was first setting out on my own as a young man, why it would be that if I bought, the marked down chicken, it would be about a third of the time, if I didn't cook it immediately, it would suddenly smell like chlorine. Well, it turns out that they had taken it to the back, put a new label on it, and cleaned it up a little bit. And that's why usually if you buy a chicken at the store and it's bad, it has that weird ammonia, chlorine kind of flavor to it. That's part of what happens when that chicken goes bad, is that taste gets magnified. It's their attempt to try to pull a fast one on you at the meat counter, in addition to the weird texture it gets when it goes bad. And a lot of people overseas have to ask a question, why do you Americans have to do that to your chickens? And it's because of how they're raised in the industrial food system. Now, a lot of you don't have access to truly pasture-raised chicken. And I say truly, I mean, when you think of like a pastoral scene from a farm where, there's a pig and chickens running around, the yard, eating whatever they come across and being fed identifiable food from, Farmer McDonald, old McDonald on his farm, that image in your head of a farm is not the reality for industrial farms. It just isn't. We know what the chicken system looks like. You've heard people talk about this before, that pasture raised means that they have access to getting outside if they want to. That free range means that they can get out of the cage if they want to, for like a few minutes at a time at best. Making these things not that different than just the chicken that the PETA advocates will tell you that you shouldn't eat for moral reasons, because the chickens never leave their cage, can't really get out of their cage, have no space to grow, and are kept in miserable conditions. It's not that different, really, unless you actually get a truly pasture-raised chicken. And to find that, you have to pretty much go to your local butcher or find independent farmers who are selling chicken themselves. How do you do that? Well, the problem is there aren't any really good databases for that, to be truly honest with you. I would like to build one, but right now it's just kind of a massive problem because the information is scattered all over the internet. And so what I'd like is to put out this pitch again to you. Is at some point I'm going to start a Patreon, and it's going to help essentially fund this website that I want to build. And it would be open to the public, where anybody can go and go to click on their state in the United States at first, and eventually, hopefully, the UK would be in there, and Canada, and a few other places. But they can click on wherever it is they live and just see where all the options are for buying beef directly from a farmer, maybe raw milk directly from a farmer if they can, chicken, lamb, what have you. I don't know exactly about the design for this yet because I am not a web designer, so that's why we need a Patreon for it, is to essentially pay someone to build it for me and then maintain the website. But this information is out there. It's just hard to find. And I'm lucky in that if I want to buy chicken, I can get it from two places that are local, one being a local farmer's market that actually sells chicken that it was raised in these kind of conditions and processed locally before they put it on their own shelf. Or I can buy it directly from the rancher I buy my beef from because his next door neighbor raises chickens in a good way. But when you get to these kind of chickens, you'll notice one thing is that they are significantly smaller than the chickens at your grocery store. There's a humorous image. If I can find it, I'll put it on the screen. If I can't find it, I'm sorry. But it shows chickens from 40 years ago, chickens from 20 years ago, and chickens sold today. And they're just, the size increase is ridiculous. The chickens today are like the Incredible Hulk of chickens. If you ever if you're at Walmart or Winco or any of these places and you see the big bag of frozen chicken breasts and the things are enormous, they're not just injected with water to make them bigger. There's some of that going on, but they are enormous because of what they're fed and how they're raised. They're raised to be bigger and less flavorful as a consequence of that. These are reasons why people don't want to eat our chicken overseas, why the United States has a hard time exporting chicken. Now, some countries obviously do import chicken from the U.S., but a lot of places will not because of what we do to the animals. So what do you do as a consumer? You want to make a better health choice. Get to know your local rancher and to know your local farmers. Probably a good idea these days anyway with the state of the economy. And buy local if you can. Buy from online meat dealers if local isn't feasible, if you can afford it. I'm curious, though, how much do you know about how chicken is processed and how much you know about why American chicken doesn't sell overseas, especially if you're actually watching this from the UK or someplace where you can't really get American chicken? Let me know in the comments, what it is you think if you were not an American of the, American meats in general, how safe they are. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for tuning in today.